Everybody, welcome back to the Podcast for Champions with David Peavy. Again, I have another special guest, maybe my favorite, one of my favorite people of all time, DJ Peavy, who, yes, is my son. I asked him and Micah Peavy to be on the podcast tonight, but Micah informed us that he has an exam, and I guess that might be a little bit more important. But we'll bring Micah on at another date, and this gives us time to just talk with you. A lot of people growing up in the basketball world in Texas got to see DJ play for a very, very long time. I'm going to let him tell his story. We're going to have a good conversation. I want you to ask questions too. We can go back and forth if you want to. But DJ was very good as a young player. Went through some things in his career and in his life that we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about what it was like being a coach's son, and then your journey. You know, your journey through this game of basketball, and where it has taken you. And I think you have an unbelievable story, and you get to tell the world now. So, DJ Peavy, man, start off just giving us a little background on yourself, and tell us a little bit about your journey, and then I'll just cut you off and start asking questions.
First off, thank you for having me. But starting off playing basketball was highly rated growing up.
When did you start? I'm just gonna cut in periodically. I want to know, do you even remember when you started playing basketball?
Since I can remember.
Yeah.
Everybody just tells me ever since I can walk.
Yep.
I always had a ball in my hand, and
yep.
so.
And I'm gonna cut you off again. I remember the first time that I remember you playing basketball. I had just gotten a job at Gonzales High School. That was my first head coaching job, and that was in 2002. 2002. That sounds right. Yeah, 2002. And in the first week, I had to run my basketball camp. And so in 2002, how old were you?
3.
3 years old. Okay. And I remember I took you to the camp thinking, you know, he's comfortable in the gym. He's always got a ball in his hand. He won't be in the way. He can just be there with Dad and have a good time. And I split the age groups up, and my youngest age group was second grade. So I put the second graders over on one goal, and I was moving around the gym and I could just hear the parents in the stands like going crazy. And I looked over, and you were sitting there making free throws at 3 years old, and everybody was going crazy. And I was like, I had no idea that was a big deal because I had seen you play, and that's all I knew. And then remember watching you play all week at the camp and thinking, okay, this kid might be pretty good. He might be pretty good because out of the second graders, you were the second best one out of all of them, and you were 3 years old. So I didn't mean to interrupt you already, but that's when I remember you playing. Do you even remember that at all?
I've never heard that story.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but that's kind of shocking to me. I've always thought that it was through my hard work, but I guess I was always
you were naturally pretty good, man.
Yeah. So but first time I remember that I was pretty good was the Phenom camp. That was in 6th grade.
Okay.
And
well, I got plenty more stories. All right, cool.
That was, where do we go?
San Diego.
And in 6th grade, and that was supposed to be like one of the better camps. And then I came back, I think I went to had the All-Star game and did well there, and so I was like, okay, I'm pretty good. And I think that was the first time I got to really see it on a national schedule or a national level.
Mm-hmm.
And then should I jump into
No, because I'm gonna cut you off right now. Okay, because you don't. There's things you don't remember. So we moved from Gonzales. We were there for 2 years. Then I got the job at Hightower in Houston. And I remember we signed you up for a little league. I think it was at a church not far from the house. And your mom had to do a whole lot of the work. She signed you up for the league. And remember, a few days later, she got a phone call asking if she was interested in being a coach. So she was your first basketball coach. And I, for some reason, could not go to your game. That first game you played was on a Saturday morning. I believe my team was playing in some fall event that I had to be at. And your mom, I remember I walked in the door and she had a look on her face like, this boy is different. So I said, what happened? And she said, that you were really, really, really good. You played so serious with all the other boys. Just they looked like they had never played before, like most kindergartners had never done before. And she said one time there was a loose ball. You jumped on the ball, and a boy jumped on the back of your head, and you came up. And both of your teeth, your front teeth, were still on the ground. You picked them up, handed it to her, and kept on playing. And the referee stopped the game and made you leave, made you get off the court, and you were done for the day. And she said you sat on the bench pouting the whole time because you wanted to play. You did not care about your teeth. So that's when she knew, okay, this dude might be a little bit different. So there was a whole lot of basketball before that Phenom camp, but yeah, that Phenom camp was something because we got to go somewhere else. We went to California, played against kids from all over the country, and you more than held your own. You were one of the best players there, and yeah. We could see a different person when we came back. When we came back, then you had a different type of confidence. And then that's when you never wanted to leave the gym. Never wanted to leave the gym. And but now, go back. Go keep going. I'm going to try not to cut you off so much. So we went from Phenom. When was that? Was that 6th grade?
That was 6th grade.
Okay, so 6th grade. Is that when I
got held back.
Okay, so you were young. So your birthday's in July, and then remember we went and played nationals was that in Florida? Mm-hmm. And we saw and talked to a lot of kids who were 2 years older, playing in the 6th grade, a lot bigger, a lot stronger. You were very good, but we just felt like because of your age, and you were diagnosed with dyslexia, right around that same time.
Right.
So as I started doing some looking around to see, how we could help you academically and put you on a even playing field with all the other better players in the country. Who were, since you were so young, so we decided to, you did the 6th grade again and took you to St. George in San Antonio. That
first year was very tough for me. I remember, I've always been a good student in the classroom, even with me having dyslexia.
Yeah.
But I think that was the first time I had a C, and it was definitely really tough for me. But going back
at St. George,
going back talking about my dyslexia, I actually think that like looking back now and like seeing like knowing how I am now, I think that definitely helped me in basketball. I'm very good at patterns, especially like think about like my ball handling. It became a lot easier with me just because it's just repetition and then the patterns of everything. But yeah, it definitely going to St. George was in middle school was definitely I felt like was a game changer. That was a good sports, not just sports, but good for sports at that age. Had a lot of good players also play with me. And
you played a lot of games.
Yeah, I played 30. We were 32 in the first game or the first year, and then the last year I think we were like 28-3 or whatever. But yeah, I played 30 plus.
Yeah, I remember that. Y'all played a lot of games. It was like 2 or 3 games per week in middle school, which was cool. Very good coaching for middle school. Very good coaching. And then you grew up playing with hard work. With one of my best friends, kind of family member, Boo Man, who was really tough, very high IQ basketball coach, taught y'all to play the right way, very tough, defensive minded, and taught y'all how to win, So I remember there were about 3 years that y'all played and never lost to a team from Texas. And your name was buzzing all around the country, and at the time, coming out of the 8th grade, you were the number 1 ranked point guard in the state, and one of the best point guards in the country. And that was a pivotal time because we were living in San Antonio. I was coaching in Austin at Aikens High School. And I had dreamed about coaching you for so long, and that's right when your mom and I got separated, and you told me that you were not leaving your mom. So you stayed in San Antonio while I still coached in Austin, and you played at Steele High School, which was a very good high school. In the San Antonio area. You had a very good team, and as a freshman, started as the point guard. And I want to know, what that was like for you, being so young, playing at a high level in high school, and getting a start for another coach, who, it was kind of unexpected to you as well, because I know you had looked forward to playing for me at the time. So, tell me about what that was like for you.
It was fairly easy, honestly. Whenever I thought about my foundation, going back to Boo Man, we always had a lot of good players in the gym, older and same age, and so actually being able to start. That's not something I thought of whenever I first got there, but because of how many good players we had. But after seeing the team, I believe that I definitely deserved that. And so I also had a good freshman there with me, so I wasn't doing it on my own. Jared Liddell, who I also played with in the summer. And so I think the first tournaments, whenever I saw that I was actually at that level, and I think it was at Pflugerville. Pflugerville is the one that I remember the most because I was, the tournament, not tournament MVP, but all tournament team. And that was actually whenever SMU and Incarnate Word offered me, both of us, me and Gerald. And so after I got that, that was a big accomplishment for me. But that whole year, it definitely was a lot different, just not being coached by you, because even whenever Boo Man was coaching me, you were still either on the sideline or not too far away.
Yeah.
And that year, you still were able to come to a lot, though, because you ended up not coaching.
Yeah. So the situation I was in, I was the head basketball coach at Aikens, and I was the athletic director. And that year, when you told me you weren't coming to play, I went and talked with my boss, and I was trying to get to a job in San Antonio. And I remember my boss telling me, don't take a bad job. He convinced me to stay on as the athletic coordinator, and if I needed to, give up basketball. So I gave up my basketball position and I stayed on as the athletic coordinator. And he told me go to every one of your games. So that was cool, getting to go there. I think I missed one game that year, and that's because there was something happened. They changed the game time or game day because of weather, and I couldn't get out of another commitment. But other than that, I got to go to every one of your games your freshman year as a fan, and that was cool. That was cool. And then I got to watch you grow without me coaching you. So that was probably good for both of us. But yeah, before that, I was on the sidelines with Boo Man, with hard work. So I had an opportunity to coach you for a couple years in AAU before you got to high school. And then we hit a hurdle. Okay, you hit a hurdle in your life and in your playing career. After that season, I remember. Okay, I mean, soon after your last high school game as a freshman, you said, "Dad, I want to play for you." Okay, I remember that. So your mom and I talked about it, and I told her, and like I just hired a new coach at Aikens. I wasn't going to take that from him, so I needed to go get another job. Your mom was cool with me opening up my search to San Antonio, Austin, Houston, and Dallas, and I found a job in Houston. Okay, I found a job in Houston, and at that same time, you were already back in AAU season. So I was looking for a job and found it. And but I still was finishing out my year in Austin, and I remember getting a phone call from Boo Man first. And he was saying, "Man, these guys are so out of shape. They're out of shape." And I'm like, "What you talking about, Boo Man?" And he was like, man, we ran after practice and all the kids are just tired, even DJ. And that was a big deal because DJ was never tired. You know, you worked really hard. To this day, you were top 3, you know, and I would say top 3 of players I've ever coached as far as hardworking. And I got to put all 3 of y'all as tied for first because I feel like you always gave me everything as a player. You worked as hard as you could all the time. You, Fred Barton, and Jackson Prince. Okay, I would put all 3 of you as my 3 hardest working players ever. And so Boo Man calls and says, "Man, these guys are so out of shape. Man, DJ was in there dying." Well, little did he know you were really dying. So about while I'm on the phone with Boo Man, I get a call from Tamara, your mom, and I answer and I'm going, "Hey, what's up?" She goes, "Hey, I'm getting ready to rush DJ to the hospital." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, you know, he's clutching his chest, saying that he thinks he's having a heart attack." And I'm like, "This boy's a freshman in high school. Like, what are you talking about? He's having a heart attack." So I click back over, "Hey, Boo Man, like, Tamara's taking this dude to the emergency room." So he was like, "Man, keep me updated." So I clicked back over, and I was in Austin, and I said, "Hey, do I need to rush home?" She's like, "No, let me take him in real quick, and let's figure this out." So she was, you know, we were texting back and forth, and about an hour later, you know, she finally says, "Hey, we're done. We're in the parking lot." And your mom, okay, just to give some more background, is medical. She's been in the medical field. It's what she went to school for. She's a big-time nurse. Had a really, really big-time job in San Antonio at the time as I don't know what she was at that time, but she's always she was a chief nursing officer. Okay, pretty big deal. So she understood a lot of medical, And she's reading the report, and she's talking to me on the phone. She said, "I can't believe they just released him." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, I'm looking at this report and his enzymes are elevated." I said, "Hey, I'm a basketball coach. I know nothing about enzymes being elevated. What does that mean?" She said, "Well, when your enzymes are elevated, it's a sign of a heart attack." I'm like, this isn't even sounding right. So she called the head cardiologist at the hospital that she worked at, and he said, "Rush you to Children's," and he was going to meet y'all there. So that's when I got in my car and headed down. And 3 days later, after you being in the hospital for 3 days, as a father and a basketball coach, got some of the worst news ever. Getting told by a doctor who was in a team of 10 at the time. There were 10 doctors on your case looking at everything. They understood what was going on because they had heard that you were a highly rated basketball player, even though you were so young. And they came back and said that you had HCM, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which I understood what that meant as soon as it came out of their mouths. And then the doctor said enlarged heart. And as a basketball player, basically it's a death sentence. Basically whenever you hear that means your career is over. And that was tough to hear. And I think that was on day 2. I think we heard that on day 2. So on day 3, before you were discharged, one of the other doctors came in and he was speaking to us, and I remember asking him, "So, is that what you see?" And he gave us hope. He said, "Really, it doesn't look like it to me." He says, "To me, it looks like it could be something else, but we've got to shut him down for 6 months." And that's all I needed to hear. That there was hope. That there was hope for you, because you were devastated. We were devastated. And then for somebody who we did a lot together, but everything we did was with an elevated heart rate. We worked out together. We stayed in the gym. We did everything we did was with an elevated heart rate, and they were telling us that you could not have an elevated heart rate for 6 months. But there was hope. And then with every doctor's appointment after that, it was once a month, I believe. It was looking better and better. So basically, they just had to detrain your heart to figure out what was going on. Mm-hmm. For 14-year-old, 14, 15, tell me what that was like.
Hold on, I want to go back to that day.
Okay.
So that day, I had actually worked out five times. It was crazy. So the first one was right before school. I think it was like a good hour or so right before school. Second one was we still had like basketball period, and so during the basketball period, then right after the basketball period, we had lunch. I think I lifted with Kijana Love. He was probably one of the hardest workers I probably played with. So yeah, I worked out with him, and then after school I worked out, and then that practice. And I remember that practice. It was definitely very tough. I was in the back, and I was just I was really tired that whole time. And I remember Blue Man getting on me, which he never had to get on me about my effort at all. And so, but yeah, I remember getting in the car with my mom, and my heart just kept beating super fast, and it wasn't stopping. So there was like a case of water in the back, and so she told me to get some water, drank some water, and just throughout that time on the way back, it was just continuing to be fast, and I just ended up stopping like right on this exit that we usually never take, and I remember the exit to this day every time we pass by it, I don't know, I get like chills and stuff. But she like started checking me, and she was like, do I need to go to the hospital? And then she felt it, and then I was like, yeah. And so then we ended up going, and yeah, that first hospital, I guess they thought that I was kind of maybe I don't know, not taking it that serious, or maybe not as, I don't know. They just kind of like dismissed it within the hour, like you said.
Right.
And so then, my mom was not easy with the whole process, the whole experience there. And so then, like you said, she talked to them, and so yeah, after that first one, she talked to her, what was it?
The cardiologist.
And so then, yeah, those next 5 days, I remember being in the hospital, and last thing I remember was whenever I did the stress test, and as I was doing the stress test, there's monitors all over, and so my mom's able to read everything, and like midway, she just like walks out. Like I see her like kind of cover her face, and she walks out, and so I'm like, okay, it looks bad then. And so yeah, as I'm coming down from the stress test, because it's a workout, I see her come back and her eyes are red, and so I'm like, okay, this is actually really serious. And so then that's whenever they told us the news and of what they thought it was. And during that time, I felt like I was like going through like depression. I never really took anything serious outside of basketball at the time. So then I started looking to different things that I liked, and that's whenever I would actually say that I started really like searching in the Bible and trying to figure out different things that I like to do. One being refurbishing shoes. That's whenever I really started realizing that like I could be a creative. What I know now as a creative, and so that's kind of what sparked my interest in fashion and in shoes. But yeah, that was a pivotal moment in my life for sure.
Interesting. Yeah. And that time there, I couldn't think of anything, as it pertained to you. I saw that you were doing some different things. You started making a little bit of money, with your shoes, refurbishing shoes, painting shoes. And, I was like, that's cool, but man, I can't wait till we get back on the court. That's what I was thinking. And I thought that's what you needed. I saw you were going through a hard time. You couldn't work out. So you're talking about, you just said you had 5 workouts that day. And on most days you worked out at least 3 times. And so I knew that, this was hurting you. This was hurting you. You started gaining a lot of weight. I remember for a 14, 15-year-old kid that wasn't working out, so it wasn't like you were putting on muscle, and for you to gain 30 pounds
No, 6 months, yeah.
in 6 months was a whole lot. But we're gonna get back to that here in a minute. Let's take a little break, and find out who our sponsors are for this first segment of our podcast. And we come back, we'll get right back into it. We're back. So, man, we could talk about this all day. We can talk about this for weeks, but let's move on. Let's move on a little bit. So we were told that you had to sit for 6 months to detrain your heart, and we got some great news. I remember driving. We were in Houston, you and I. Your mom was still in San Antonio. Drove back for your doctor's appointment in San Antonio, and them giving you the green light. And we drove back 3 hours and walked right into practice, and you hadn't done anything in 6 months, and you put on your practice uniform and you jumped out there, and I was like, D, you haven't done anything yet. And you were just so ready to get out there. All these new, these were all new teammates of yours because you were at a different school the year before that. Everybody had heard about you, but most of these guys had never seen you play. And you were coming in as the coach's son,
Right.
So there were already parents talking, players talking that the coach was going to just put his son in there no matter what, whether you were better than everybody. You had heard it, and you had something to prove. And I remember how bad you were to start off with.
Right.
It's comical, but I was getting on you about, hey man, sit down somewhere. Let's get you back in shape slowly, but you weren't having it. And you were bad for a minute. But we gradually saw it coming. We saw it coming. But this was my first time coaching you as a high school coach. I had coached you in the summer. We had the same team for years. And now you were getting into a new situation where I had been coaching these boys already for a few months without you, threw you in the mix. And I know what I remember. I want to know what you remember. Tell me what that was like to be coached by me as a high school player for the first time.
I feel like it started from the first day.
Yeah.
As far as just your coaching. But yeah, that first day was definitely really tough. I remember the first time I dribbled off my foot and then went out of bounds, and you're like, all right, calm down. And so then I went on in the day, and actually I still talk about it to this day with one of my best friends, Trevin.
Mm.
And yeah, he just talked about like how big I was at the time and how like I just couldn't move. I remember the first time we went out to the track, I still competed, but yeah, I was like still like at the bottom or in the back and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like I don't think it was much different from how it was really in the AAU season and stuff like that. But yeah,
what I do remember, after about 3 weeks, and you started taking the weight off, you were getting in shape. You look like a player now, and your teammates could see you're a player, but you still weren't dominating the way you had before. And but we saw it coming. I saw it coming. My assistant, who was Kevin Woods at the time, he saw it coming. And I remember Kevin pulling me to the side. He took me into the office, and he said, hey, man, you need to stop. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, man, leave DJ alone. He said, these boys think the DJ's sorry. He said, all they hear is DJ. Every time you made a mistake, I was coaching you. And I just felt like as a coach with a son on the team, every time you made a mistake, I couldn't let it go because I couldn't have people saying that I didn't say anything when you made a mistake. But it was like it was unfair to you because other kids got to make mistakes and didn't get to hear me every time they made a mistake, but every time you made a mistake. And I've explained that to parents. It's like when you go to a game as a parent, what do you see? And, I see this. I said, but you never miss anything your kid does. If your kid does it, you saw it. I said, well, it's the same thing. I'm still his dad. I see everything he does, even though I see everything that for the most part, but there's nothing I miss when he does it. And every time you made a mistake, I had to say something, I thought. And I had to get better at that. But I can tell you now, coaching you, coaching Micah, coaching Anthony Black, who's my stepson, and now coaching Beckham, you got it worse by far.
It's not even close.
It's not even close. But you handled it. You handled it well. You handled it well for the most part. I mean, you had a couple moments where you broke, But for everything I gave you, you handled that very well. But you ended up having a good year. Okay, your sophomore year, it took you a minute to get going, but by the end, you were really, really, really solid. Very good player. Did you make all district?
Yeah. Okay,
so you made all district. Led us to the playoffs on a good team, very good team. And then as a junior and as a senior, you played on two very good teams at Decaney High School. Took us to regionals both years. And after your freshman year, you mentioned you had 2 Division I offers as a freshman. Right. Those were your first 2. Is that what it stayed at as a freshman, those 2 offers?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had SMU and Incarnate Word. And then by your senior year, SMU was nowhere to be found.
Right.
And Incarnate Word was trying really hard to get back in the mix. But you decided that to go to Mercer, okay, to play at Mercer out of high school, and tell me about that decision.
Went on the visit, and I loved it. Just seeing how the small university was, and like just the community. People were still talking about them going to March Madness. I think at that time it was like 2 or 3 years prior, and loved the coaches. Had a good relationship with the assistant coach, Coach Aker, and yeah, so it was kind of a no-brainer to me. It was out of them, and at the time,
I remember you had 10 offers. You had narrowed it down to
them and Sam Houston, though. And then Sam Houston, they said that they
got a commitment. They got a commitment, right? The day we left on your visit, Sam Houston called me, said, "Hey, man," and I remember Coach Mudge, who was the head coach there now. He was the one recruiting you. I felt like he was crying on the other end of the phone. And when he had to tell me that, I'm like, Mudge, it's part of the business. Like, hey man, appreciate you, but hey, we get it. Like a kid had gone on a visit and he committed. They did not expect him to, and they honored his commitment. And that scholarship was no longer there. And because it was between them, you had 10 that you were looking at, but those 2 were your top. And it was a good visit. And Coach Aker had done a great job of recruiting you. We all felt good about you committing on your visit. And then what happened? What? Like after you committed and before you got there, what?
You tell me. I don't know what you mean.
I know Aker got a job.
Oh, right.
So the guy who recruited you ended up getting a head coaching job at a Division II. Who he's still there in Oklahoma. Still got a good relationship with him. But the guy that recruited you was no longer there, and the guy that Coach Hoffman hired brought another point guard with him.
Right.
So that changed. That changed some things. So you get there as a freshman. As it's already tough as a freshman, and then the coach that just gets hired as an assistant brings another point guard with him from the school he came from, and tell me your thoughts about your freshman year.
First off, I didn't know how big of a deal that was at that time. Just having a guy who's out there to like look after you, which is usually assistant coach. So practices were a lot different. Didn't have people. Coach Hoffman was a good coach, and so he always looked after me and stuff. But that really like made sure that I was good. I felt like, but going there was tough because the guy that you were talking about that brought in the player was really good, Georgie. He was the overseas player, and so he had a a lot that I didn't, just playing with older guys at a younger age. And so did not expect to play a lot that first year at all. But then once games started happening, I started playing better. And the first game, I think, was versus UAB, and got in the first half with like probably 10 minutes to go, and started off hit a three, and then I think ended up having a floater right after that. And so then I started feeling pretty good about it. And then I think I finished up with 9 points that game. Then the second game was at home, and had 15 points. And then right soon after that I had 16. And so then I started playing pretty well. And then soon after that, that's whenever my back injury happened.
Mm-hmm. So you had a heart injury in high school, came back from that, worked your way back into being a Division I player, went Division I out of high school, coach that recruited you, got another job right before you got there. Wasn't looking good, you know, as a father and as a coach that has seen this process over and over. I felt bad. This is probably not going to be a good deal. The guy that was your advocate, the coach that was going to speak for you in those coaches meetings, he was gone. The coach that just got the job brought a player. So I was really proud to see that you found a way. You found a way to get on the court, and it was by hitting shots. So you played a lot of two, but then after watching the first couple of games, I realized, well, y'all's best player was a two.
Yeah.
And I knew, man, once conference starts, he's not coming off the court. So if you can't get minutes at the one, you're not going to get much at the two. You're going to get a normal freshman year, you know, meaning you got to watch a whole lot and keep getting better. And I felt like you handled it well. But, you know, I also saw the writing on the wall for everything. You know, one, it was 4 years since they had beaten Duke in the NCAA tournament. I knew if they didn't do something in the fifth year that the coaches were probably not going to make it. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those where I'm talking to you like, hey, man, do you like this place enough to stay there after the coaches get fired? And, you know, you were like, well, how do you know? Because I know what I know. And coaches got fired. And I just remember, and then that last month of the season, your back was hurting so bad that we shut it down anyway.
Right.
And you were ready to go. And then, of course, coaches got fired. So you made the decision to transfer, and while you were hurting, you decided to go to Collin, junior college,
right.
Okay, which is north of Dallas, which was cool for me. I got to have you close. We did not know you were going to redshirt. So we thought you were going to have a good year at Collin and then move on to your next destination. But once you got here, we went and got your back checked out, mm-hmm. and the doctor said it was probably best for you to take a year if you had that opportunity, and we did.
Right. We
had that opportunity. Then COVID hit. And we had no idea what anything was going to look like after that. Am I right?
Right.
Okay. All right. I'm just making sure.
Yeah, we whenever it happened, we definitely thought that JUCO was not going to play.
That's right.
And
so
then
we
that's
didn't know.
Whenever D1 started reaching out and asking if I was available and letting me know that that JUCOs weren't going to play. And so that's whenever the thought of me leaving Collin happened.
So you had one coach, two coaches. Now, before you could ever play a game at Collin, the day before school started,
I had moved in 3 days prior.
You had already moved back into your dorm, and Austin P wanted you to come on right now. So you packed up your car and drove to Clarksville, Tennessee, to go to go to Austin Peay. To a coach that had no idea who you were. He heard about you. We talked on the phone one time, and you were now going to play for another coach, back to the Division I ranks. And it was rocky. It was rocky. And it was one of those deals where it was like, if we had time to look at their system and their style and the coach, and he had time to look at you, he probably wouldn't have recruited you because you were not his type of player, and you probably wouldn't have gone to play for him. He was not your type of coach. So not that anybody was wrong, but that was a rough year. You played, but it was 12 minutes.
Right.
About 12 minutes a game, and it was rough. It was rough, and you were still dealing with your back. You had numbness in your leg, so you had to miss some games and on and off. And then that coach left.
Right.
So then you had another coach come in, and it was the same type of deal. So now you got a new coach who brought players that he wanted. So you've had a journey. And you had a solid last year. You graduated. You still had 2 years to play. Still had 2 years you could have played. What made you decide that you were done playing basketball in college?
I felt like the writing was on the wall for me. My back was I was going on 3 years with my back. Continued to cause me problems, and I felt good with what I accomplished playing basketball.
Right.
And I'd always thought about having a clothing brand after probably my freshman or sophomore year, and so I was kind of looking forward to really focusing in on my brand. But yeah, that last year definitely just was a good ending for me. Like you said, the coach, I wasn't his guy.
Yeah.
He had already brought some guys in that he felt was gonna lead the team, and so I kind of had to work my way into it and kind of show him that I belonged.
Right.
I remember the first couple of practices, a walk-on actually was coming into practice before me, and no shade, but I knew that I could play, and yeah, I think I eventually started five games or so, and then the other games I played 15 plus.
Right.
So yeah,
it ended up being all right. I enjoyed watching you play, and this is what my hope was always. Your goal was always to play in the NBA, and that was what we always thought. Growing up, watching you play, being one of the best players in the country as a young kid, it looked like, man, this is what was going to happen. He was going to be an NBA player. And then when things started happening and getting you back, and I saw where you were going, I felt like, okay, he's heading back in that direction. But it was just one thing after another. And my hope for you after that was enjoy what you're doing, get something out of it, and then at the end have no regrets. So knowing that, so you had 2 more years you could have played. And coaches and people were always, man, DJ can still play, man, da, da, da. I was at peace knowing that you were at peace. When talking with you and when you were done and you felt good about it, it was like, man, I'm happy.
I could have been done after that TCU game.
Oh, yeah. That was special. You know what? That might have been one of the best moments as a father, watching you play against Micah at TCU, and you had a good game.
Yeah.
You had a good game in front of a lot of friends and family. And you looked like you belonged on that court. You know what I'm saying? On a Big 12 court, you more than held your own. Like, you looked like one of them dudes. So it was like, all right, you got your moment. And it was cool. It was cool. But now, transition to life outside of basketball and everything you dreamed about in basketball. Now what are you doing?
I have a clothing brand that I've been pursuing ever since I stopped playing basketball. Sorry. But first, after basketball, I thought I was ready. It definitely hit me hard. Just not having the structure, not having the schedule.
Yeah.
But having the brand kind of kept me in somewhat of a schedule, and started working towards the different things that I kind of saw in the brand. My brand is called Patient Victory.
Okay.
It's play off our last name, Peavy, and it's a reminder to me to continue to stay patient through our set out victories, and also it's to me has been what my life has looked like and what a lot of others, and so in Patient Victory I want to share what like everybody's Patient Victory story.
Okay.
I've talked about mine in this podcast, and so yeah, I want to bring other people on and kind of have them share theirs as well through my clothes.
And how's that been for you? You know, to this point, as far as, is it what you thought of, you know, when you started it?
No, not at all. I thought I could just be like the creative director, so to say, but I have to do a lot more hats than that, and I've had to, learn a lot more than I thought that I would really need to, on the business side, on the actual clothes. I actually just came back from LA and really just immersed myself in their culture of their fashion culture, and I got to learn more about fabrics and a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's cool. So watching or looking at social media and seeing your brand pop up, you know, on different athletes. You know, I see Cade Cunningham wearing your stuff. Of course, AB wearing your stuff. I know that you just had a shipment the other day to how many?
45
NBA players that will be wearing your brand. It's cool. You know, it's kind of like, you know, turning on ESPN2 and watching one of your games. You know, I get that same type of pride when I see somebody wearing your stuff, knowing what you've put into it, and getting to see you every day, you know, pour into what you're doing and learning how to tell your story. You know, and I've told you this before, like, bro, you got a story. Like, go ahead and tell your story. You know, Patient Victory, like you say, you know, be patient, but you've already won. You know, keep grinding, doing what you do, and I mean, I know there's a lot more to come.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't get to everything, but like I said, it would have taken us about a week on this podcast. But man, I look forward to having you back on here sometime and giving us some updates on what's going on. But before we get off, why don't you tell everybody how they can find you and your brand, and how they can order the best stuff out right now?
My website is patientvictory.com, and I'm on Instagram, Twitter, or Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and then that's Patient Victory. All one word.
Well, get out there and get your Patient Victory, and man, we'll talk soon, probably tonight at home. But I appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Much love.